All right, let's go ahead and call this briefing meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. It's a lovely day here at the board at the Department of Natural Resources on August 10th, 2023. I will note that all are present except for Randy Crozier, who is excused. We'll miss him today and look forward to seeing him again sometime soon. So let's just go ahead and jump in. I will just mention as part of my welcome that we are so thrilled to have Mike Davis join our board. Glad that you will soon be official. We'll do the oath of office during the official meeting, but welcome, Mike. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. And in this meeting, just so you know, this is the briefing meeting before the board meeting. So we don't take any formal action. We're just going to go through the agenda and make sure that we have the opportunity to ask questions of the staff and be prepared for the meeting. So really just introduce yourself to us, and we're so glad to have you here.
I'll give you an informal introduction then.
Sounds good. We want the real deal.
Yes, I'm from the Heber area. I've been there about 33 years. I was born and raised in Salt Lake. I'm an engineer, went to the University of Utah. I've been involved in engineering, private engineering for about 20 years after that, and then I got into public service and working for Wasatch County, and I still work for Wasatch County. I've worked in as a water manager and then as the county manager, and now I'm over the MIDA area, if you're familiar with MIDA. In the county up there. So I have my wife and I have 8 children. It's a second marriage, so we're a blended family. And got lots of grandkids and just enjoy life. Life is good.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
I'm
Welcome.
very excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity for everybody and working with me. Thank you.
Well, we're so glad for your appointment, and this is a great group. I really enjoy working on this board, and so I hope that you will as well. All right, so I guess maybe we just jump into the agenda. Let's see. So I'm a little out of practice on this. We've got minutes. Is there anything on the minutes that we need to bring up now?
I thought the minutes were marvelous.
Excellent.
I couldn't
Thank you.
find anything but good information there.
Wow. Excellent. Okay.
It should be noted that I think that's the first time Charles hasn't found something.
That we should make sure that we put that into the minutes. So you'll be ready for a motion to approve then when we get there?
Yes.
Yeah, all
Madam
right.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's see. So next we'll hear a Bear River Commissioner report. Is it Candace, or do you want to give us do we need to know anything about this as we?
Sure, that's a great question. So based on some legislation that's happened this last year, we have a new Bear River Commissioner. The state engineer, Teresa Wilhelmsen, will be here to provide a report to the board.
Great. Okay. And then we're going to jump into, looks like we've got one feasibility report. Ani, are you going to give that to us? Awesome. Great, thank you.
I'll just give a quick rundown of this project. So it's Liberty Pipeline Company, and it's located in Liberty, about 10 miles northwest of Huntsville. They are coming to the board because the applicant has 2 main pressure zones, the south zone and the north zone. The north zone is currently fed by a spring that is susceptible to drought conditions. They are receiving outside funding from the Bureau, a drought resiliency grant, but I'll go through that in the meeting. So in 2018, the spring nearly went dry. The applicant was faced with considering an emergency connection to a neighboring system. And they experienced about 30% loss in their water system, primarily to the leaks in the existing 6-inch distribution pipe. So they're going to be building a booster pump and a transmission line. And they also want to replace the leaky 6-inch older pipe with an 8-inch PVC pipe. So that's the gist of the project. And the board will only be funding about 60% of the cost because of that outside grant from the Bureau.
Kyle, this one's in your area.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to participate with their orientation meeting with Liberty Pipeline with Ani and I think Tom was there, and then also the Nathan Smith, I believe, with JUB
Yes.
and stuff. It's pretty straightforward. Definitely needed, and fully supportive of it.
Great. Are there any questions?
Question, Madam Chair, for Ani, I'm just a little concerned that an 8-inch transmission line seems a little bit small for 11,000 feet. Is that adequate for their anticipated growth? And
You'll probably have to ask Nathan that question today.
okay,
He's said that it's sufficient, so.
sure. I mean, I wouldn't want to make it more expensive than it already is, but I just wondered if it was adequate for moving from those two pressure zones. So I'll ask him. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Question, Ani, so are they gonna request any different terms? Are they comfortable with the terms that are here, or where are we at on that?
Jamie, the president, was a little concerned about the interest rate. We tried to, gather all the costs of their water, and it just, because there's so many, like many small towns, wealthier people are moving in, their adjusted gross income is much higher than maybe the local people can afford, but we just had to go with the numbers. So they may request different terms, but I haven't heard that from them in conversation, so.
But you're comfortable with the terms that are there, though? Those are what our guidelines show?
Yes.
That we should be
Yes.
going with?
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Marisa.
Yeah, if I may, Ani and I actually worked on the financial feasibility together. Really tried to dig to make sure that we were catching all the costs. Russell, some years ago, figured out a way to figure out property tax when you have some property tax that you pay for water. And so we've got some information on that. She looked for the secondary water that they get from another company. So she's tried really hard to find everywhere that they pay for their water, and it does show that they're still under their affordability.
Okay.
So, while there may be some more well-to-do people that live there, residents that live there that contribute to the Magi, it would take quite a bit to really move that Magi if, so. And that's what our guidelines are to do, is to follow the Magi at, the 1.4. So Ani's put a lot of work to make sure we're trying to find all their spending that they've spent. But the average culinary bill comes from them,
Yep.
and they looked at their billing, and
They actually took their highest year in the last couple of
Okay.
years, and it still was fairly low, so.
And if I'm recalling, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but it's not the mean adjusted gross income, it's the median adjusted gross
Yes.
income. Is that right? So that,
Yeah.
that can be skewed up because of high income, but it wouldn't be skewed up in the way
Yeah.
like an average would. So I guess I feel, I'm sympathetic to their concern, but.
well, and we're not telling them how much they have to charge people. We're just telling them what this shows, and doesn't it still show quite a bit of room there that they can, and again, that's all we can go by. We can't go knock on doors and find all the different, information. So, and we get that information from the Division of Drinking Water. They use that same thing, same guideline.
If they were in a situation where the numbers came out a little differently and it showed they I don't even know how to say this, but essentially it came out differently than meeting the threshold, or how would we, I'm rusty on this stuff. How would we adjust the interest rate? I can't remember how we would do
So
that if they
we
didn't
had
meet
that
the
with Eden.
if they exceeded the affordability guidelines is what I'm asking.
Yeah, Tom had that with Eden. Is that correct,
Okay.
Tom? He'll come. We do make adjustments either on the term or on the interest rate.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
On Eden, because they already charge a lot more than the Liberty folks, they went above the affordability guideline, as well as they're hooked into the Wolf Creek pressurized irrigation system, which charges $400 or so a year. So they were above the affordability guideline. So we gave them the 30 years, which is the maximum, and we lowered the interest rate to 1%. And they were, with that, they were still over the guideline. So
Okay.
we try to, adjust things to bring it so it breaks even with the guideline there. So.
Okay.
And the tricky thing here is Eden and Liberty are neighbors.
Yeah.
But again, if you were to go back to the last board report, Eden's culinary bill is much higher than what Liberty's bill is. And so, yeah. And I can't remember, is their affordability about the same? Because Tom helped out, Tom and Ani worked together on both of them, actually.
Eden's is a little bit lower, but it's probably within $10 a month. But they charge at least $20 more for culinary, plus their secondary is a lot higher than what Liberty's is.
Okay. Great.
And we were aware of that as Ani and I were looking at it, because Ani went with Tom to Eden, and so she's aware of that, and them being neighbors and just being presented, at the last board meeting. But we can only go with what numbers we have.
Yep. All right. Sound good, everyone? All right. Thanks for explaining that, just so we have that information kind of top of mind. So next we have Mayfield, Kyle, you'll make the motion. Excellent, thank you. And then next we have Mayfield Irrigation Company. Okay, that's great. And this is, Blaine, I think this one's in your area, is that right?
Yes, this is
Okay.
in my area,
Okay.
and Maurice has done it. It's just the committal of funds, basically,
Oh, okay.
on the secondary
Okay.
type thing. So it's pretty straightforward.
Straightforward.
It's just like we did a lot of them last time.
Yeah, so we committed funds already for the grant, and I think we actually have the contract in place for the grant agreement, but yeah, this is just committal of funds for the loan because they had to get a lot more requirements done for the loan.
Okay. Are there any questions on this one? All right. Blaine, you'll make the motion?
Yes.
Excellent.
We told Mike Davis he missed out on a lot of fun this last year.
Sorry I missed.
Barrett, you're just being efficient. All right, and then we have another one in Kyle's area, Davis and Weber County's Canal Company, committal of funds, Tom. Kyle, do you want to set this one up for us?
This is just more of the same.
Okay,
This is
yep.
just another one of their projects. As you recall, over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, we've had a number of these requests come in from Davis and Weber County's Canal Company. And as they're just working out through their master plan and changing their open canals to enclosed precast concrete box culverts, then this is just another phase of that ongoing work.
Great. All right.
Like Blaine mentioned, they have a master plan and they have sections of canal, the Davis-Weber Canal, that they have targeted to improve, and they're just working down their list. And they apply for water smart grants, and when they get them, they come to the board to kind of help with the local funding. So notice they have a 1.4 million in water smart grant. So water resources cost share and amount hasn't changed from authorization. So the payment, the recommended payment hasn't changed either. So
Great.
So question on that, do they have that Water Smart grant in hand then?
I believe they're finalizing it. Yeah, so they're already applying for next year's. So they may be back with another application for it. And Rick Smith, the manager, they were not required to be here, but
Yeah.
he's planning on being here in person, just for
Okay.
your information.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I wanted to, double check on that. So on committal of funds, we don't require the applicants to be here, but,
Yeah.
okay. Rolling back on Mayfield, will someone be here from Mayfield, do we expect?
Sorry, the company probably won't.
Okay.
But the engineer plans to be online through the Google Meet.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, thanks, Tom. Were there any other questions on that one? Go ahead, Dana.
I have a question for Ani from Liberty, and just thought that
Great.
I was gonna wait, and then I thought,
Yeah, no, go for it.
on their cost estimate, is it the SWIP or the traffic control that's causing their mobilization to be almost $400,000?
I think it was the mobilization, and
We can't hear you.
Oh, nice, look at that.
as I recall in her cost estimate, it was the mobilization that was big. Those 3 items were different line items, so we put them together. So, but yeah, the mobilization.
Hi,
All right.
thank you.
Again, if they don't actually have invoices for things like that, you know, but it also allows, you know, if there's a higher cost somewhere else, it can take care of that.
That was a little Greek to me. So I'm the economist in the bunch. I'm not the water expert in the bunch. Could you explain what mobilization is, just so I know?
Mobilization and mobilization's really fun in cost estimates.
Great.
You can get bids, and it'll be 10,000 on one and 500,000 on another.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a way sometimes that bids will put in contingencies.
What
Oh, sorry.
Thank
So
you.
mobilization
Thank you,
is basically getting set up.
Okay,
Getting the
gotcha,
equipment
mobilizing.
there, getting
Okay.
the contractor there. Yeah. So you can have some very high mobilization for some projects that are way up high on a mountaintop, which I've been involved in, you know, so.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thanks for that question. All right. So let's see. Next we have Woodland South Hills Irrigation Company. And this is in your area, Mike, but Russell's been kind of doing the work on this, making sure we're all up to speed. So Russell, do you want to share with us and then?
Yeah.
I know, it says it's my area.
Oh, no, before
I know, it says.
we had
This is why
Juliette,
we're so happy you're here, Mike.
They tried to give it to me first.
Juliette got lucky and got to have it before you came along, Mike. Okay, Woodland South Hills, they've got, it's a small community just outside Woodland, up by the Upper Provo. At build out, it's gonna be 78 homes. Right now, there's 47 homes up there, but all the lots are sold and everybody has to pay dues into the company, whether they're active or not, taking water. They've got 3 wells right now. One of them was shut down by the Division of Drinking Water because it isn't grouted deep enough. It's only grouted to 25 feet. All 3 wells only produce 40 gallons a minute. Each produce 40 gallons a minute. And they recently drilled a new well to help out in case they have to shut down any other wells or if any other wells are down. And so this project is going to be grouting the one well to 100 feet, building a pump house for the new well, and adding telemetry into the system. And also they're going to be adding a little bit of pipeline to help with looping in the system to cut out some of those dead ends. Project is expected to cost $726,000, and the board is being requested to authorize and commit 85% of the project cost up to $617,000. And the project would be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $20,600. And if you're wondering why it's 0% in 30 years, because they're way over the affordability guideline of the board. It's very expensive water up there. And that's staff's report.
Thanks,
Any
Russell.
questions?
So I'll admit, yeah, I've been filling in as the board member for these projects, but I'll be honest, it's really just been doing the review and signing off, and then I've just been leaning really hard on Russell to do even more than he normally does. But I feel like this feels
Okay.
like a good project. And are there any questions for Russell? Yeah, go ahead.
Down here, just to clarify, so the new well has already been drilled, is that right?
Yes, it has
Okay.
been.
And so do they have fire flow, adequate water storage and so forth?
They've
Question.
got a 600,000 gallon tank. That's one of the reasons they wanted to add a third well to the system in case there are wildfires up there. And according to the company, they do meet the county fire marshal's fire code.
Okay, perfect, thank
That's a
you.
good question.
And part of the project we did with them 20 years ago was installing fire hydrants throughout this development when we helped put in new pipeline and the 600,000 gallon tank. So,
And it looks like that's been paid off.
yes, it was just recently
Yeah.
paid off about 2 months ago.
Good, okay, that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on this one? All right. Mike, would you be open to making the motion on this?
I'm glad to do it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll be ready for that one, and that is authorization and committal of funds. So I imagine that someone from the project will be here and we can ask questions if we need to.
Yes, the president will be here in person.
Great.
And the engineer will be online,
Okay.
and the vice president.
Great. All right, thanks, Russell.
Question for you, Russell. They're not gonna try, they're getting 0% and they're getting 30 years, which are both on the outer end, and it's due to the affordability. They're not gonna request more, are they?
That would be a surprise.
Okay, okay, good question.
So hopefully no.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. No, I'm glad, Blaine, that you're asking on all of these because it's good to know what's coming. So, I agree. I agree.
Gee, Blaine, they're not from Cache Valley.
Yeah, hopefully they'll see these as very favorable terms, and if they don't, and we're surprised with it, I'm not certain that I'd be willing to make any other considerations. Okay, so it looks like after we finish those projects, we move into integrated water planning in the Great Salt Lake Basin. Laura Vernon will be doing that. Candace, anything that we need to know about that?
Nope, so just a quick reminder on that one. This comes out of last year's HB 429, with our kind of efforts to establish a basin plan for the whole entire watershed. So $5 million was appropriated by the legislature. Then we also went and applied for a $3 million basin study through the Bureau of Reclamation. So right now this overall project has about $8 million in a few years to get it done. The kind of first initial step is to do a work plan. So that's what Laura will be kind of talking about, is the overall work plan. The work plan is not due to the legislature till November, but we are, working our way through the process and wanted to keep you guys updated and informed about it.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. And then we are going to go over those capital asset management plan rules. And I know that we had those to review in the interim. And Shalane, do you just want to update us on, so we'll be taking a motion, right? Or taking action?
So I tried to incorporate the comments that I received from board members, from others that had concerns about the way the rule was the draft rule was written, was requiring it before they came to you for funding. Now it allows them to consider it part of project cost, create that plan as they're working on a project. So I just wanted to check before I ask you to adopt these rules in the meeting. Is there any other concern or comment that you might have about these rules? Do you all agree that that's a reasonable provision to allow them to consider this creating of a plan part of their project?
You good? Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I thought that was reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So we'll be ready to go. You'll do the presentation, then I'll call for action. Is there anyone who feels particularly interested in this item and would like to make the motion?
I will.
Great, thanks, Dana. All right, I think we're good.
Good.
Okay.
I'm up next.
Okay,
I'm
great.
not moving because
All
I'm
right,
here again.
yeah, sounds great. Go ahead.
So up next is the statutory water bank application and guidelines. And of course, once this was printed and sent out, then we found some little grammar things, little issues. But of course, the statutory water bank is a bit more complicated than a contract water bank. The act requires more, there's a little more in-depth. But for the board's information, there is a bank forming in Randy's area, actually. Too bad he's not here today. But we actually do have a public comment we received online. It's the only comment we received online, but it is regarding the statutory banks, that they've been waiting for this application so that they could officially submit, are hoping to get it submitted and approved in the October meeting. So if there is nothing substantive that needs to be changed, we can, I would ask that, you maybe adopt the application with grammar changes or punctuation changes. I noticed, for instance, one place, it says changed application instead of change application. So it would be things like that. It would be no substantive changes, but we think we've prepared the application and the guidelines in accordance with the act. The water banking, water marketing team has been working on this. Emily Lewis will be here to make a presentation and update to the board about what's been happening, where we are in the process. And then we'd ask you to adopt these so that we can post them to the website and get people going on their water marketing projects. Blaine? Yeah.
After, I looked this over and got with you on, I really didn't have too many comments.
Okay.
But one of the folks I represent, just yesterday, last night, about 5 o'clock, asked if I would they'd noticed that it was on the agenda, and they wanted some clarification on paragraphs 7 to 10 of the draft rule to try to clarify how many days' notice a person would receive prior to the public hearing, wanting to have as much notice as possible. I got that last night, and first time I looked at it was this morning when I got here a little early. I went through it, and I can understand maybe where this person is coming from, but in paragraph 7, I read that, you must publish notice, and down at the bottom of the date, time, and place of the public meeting, follow the code on that. And in paragraph 8, it says it's recommended the date of the public meeting would be the next board meeting, but it can't be. You got to advertise it 2 successive weeks,
Right.
According to the statute prior to the thing, and it has to be on the website according to the rules. And then paragraph 9, it says, then we receive comments, and then the board shall accept public comments for 30 days after the adjournment. So this question, I'm not sure that we can tie it down anymore. It's following the statute.
Right.
But just so I can do what I was asked to do, is there any other clarification in there that could be put in on how many days' notice? It appears to me like we're following the statute, but.
Yeah, and I think maybe what might be different here is, city councils have a regular schedule. It's always a certain Tuesday or something. Our board meetings are maybe a little bit random sometimes. So I think that and I'll just go ahead and say this. Emily wrote the bulk of this, so it's pretty much been written by an attorney. So while it might not be perfectly clear to the layperson, I think it's pretty accurate according to the code.
This was an attorney that asked me.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Because I do think that it's pretty similar to water rights or things like that. Any sort of hearing or has to be published in the local paper. We can't just publish it here. The notice has to be published in the local paper like you said, for 2 consecutive weeks prior to the meeting, then allow for the time period. So I don't know, maybe that's a good question for Emily to see if there's a way we could make this a little clearer, but I guess I don't find it all that ambiguous. So I kind of agree with you, Blaine.
I mean, as I went through it, it just follows the statute.
Yeah.
This is an attorney that wants it nailed right down, though, and
Yeah.
Question for Shalane. I made some comments online, and I think when I read the program guidelines, that answered
Okay.
almost all of my
Okay.
questions, or I don't have any additional questions today. So,
Okay, thank you.
Shalane.
Any other questions on this?
Madam Chair, I have
Yeah, go ahead.
And just one other thing to add, and so I was, Ryan Goodrich reached out to me from Ashley Valley Water and Sewer Improvement District.
That's the public comment.
Which, and I just wanted to note, he did tell me he was planning to be here in person to provide
Oh,
a
okay,
public comment.
okay.
So I don't know if there'll be
Gotcha.
if, as long as he's here, then
Yeah.
we'll do that. If not, then we
Right.
can read the public
Perfect.
comment.
Okay.
Just making a note to remember that we're likely have some public comment on that. Right, so we'd get to the point then that we would take action on approving it's both the application and the guidelines, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
And instead of as staff's written, staff's recommendation is as written, we
Oh,
could
yeah.
modify that to simply say with,
With
Grammatic-
non-substantive
yes.
changes or something like
Yes.
that? Okay.
that would be great.
Okay. All right. I mean, I spent a little time looking at this, but, you know, it feels kind of complicated to me. However, I think we just need to just keep moving, right? Like,
Yeah.
just keep moving.
Well, and I think it's similar to kind of how we did the contract bank. Until you
Yeah.
actually have
Yes.
one, then you got to start it through the process. You figure out how it works.
Yeah,
how it
exactly,
really works.
exactly. So, I mean, does everyone feel comfortable with this moving as is? Okay. All right.
Just one other thing to note. And Emily will probably cover this in her presentation, but just as a reminder to the board, so we put in a USBR, Bureau of Reclamation grant for a water marketing strategy. This is a 3-year project, so this is all part of this, right? So we're actually a little over 3 years, so we're expecting a final report in the next several months.
Yes.
And this was one of those pieces that we really wanted to include because the statute does lay out the 2 different types of banks, the contract bank, the statutory water bank. And so this will help us as we go forward and get additional applications to have this laid out, especially as we already have one, you know, wanting to be formed as soon as possible. So we are expecting to see that report here in the next several months, but just wanted to remind you guys that it's kind of part of this overarching process. I would also add that there will likely be some recommended statute changes as we've gone through these process. And so we'll make sure to communicate those to the board, but that may be something that Emily talks about or that comes out in the final report.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Charles, do you want to make the motion on that one?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will be happy to do that.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I
Yeah.
could, before Shalane leaves the podium, if I go back to the previous agenda item, I realized I'm late to the party, and so I realized that I had made some online comments
Okay, great.
on that. And it has to do at the very end of the capital asset management plan review. And it's, if the plan is found deficient, the division will notify the Water Conservancy District of the deficiencies and provide an opportunity to cure. And my question was, what are those, you know, what are the requirements there? What happens if they say, well, I'm not gonna submit it, and they've already received the grant and stuff? Are there some things that can be put in place to compel them to?
Yeah, and I think this is one instance where we'll probably be working closer with them than maybe we would on other issues, yeah. If they're, I think for the most part, if they provide us a list of their assets and what they think they're worth, when they're gonna need to be replaced and how much it's gonna cost to replace them, that's gonna meet our needs. And again, it's probably going to be similar to other things where we're not gonna go out and visually verify every single asset to make sure they've told us everything. This is just, I think the point of this ultimately is to say, you can't just come to the board willy-nilly anytime you have an issue. We need you to come up with a plan. I think that was ultimately the goal of the legislature, is to come up with a plan. And this, by helping make it part of a project, if they come to you for funding, then we can work with them to say, yes, this is sufficient, or no, this is not. So I think it's like anything else we do. When someone submits a water conservation plan that we don't think is sufficient, we let them know. This is what you're missing. Can you come up with these calculations, or can you provide us with a little bit more information here? Maybe you need to get your engineer a little bit more involved. So, yeah, I think just like anything else, the division and board are willing to work with people to help them accomplish their goals. So.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I can't imagine this would be the case, but if we ran into a situation where the other party did not want to, you were working with them and they did not want to work with us for whatever reason, I suppose when it came time for them to apply for something through us, we could lean on them that way.
And that's kind of the point, is well, now we're allowing them to consider it part of a project. If ultimately they don't provide something that we feel is sufficient, then we're going to put them on the list that
Could be part of
we
the
recommend the
consideration.
board doesn't fund again.
Okay.
If they're not willing to come up with a good plan for managing their assets.
Okay, all right. I always prefer the carrot, but knowing that we have a stick is helpful. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Director Ferry snuck in, so I just wanted to recognize him. Thanks so much for joining us. We're glad you're here, and we're really excited about our new board member. So you'll be doing the oath of office then here, right now? Oh, excellent. Let's do this. Excellent. Well,
So yes, now is the time.
all right, let's get this done then.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for having me and for the work you're doing. It is extremely important. So Mike, if you'd like to stand up, and if you'll please raise your right arm to the square and repeat after me. So and state your name.
I, Michael Davis,
Having been appointed by Governor Spencer J. Cox
having been appointed by Governor Spencer J. Cox
and confirmed by the Utah State Senate
and confirmed by the Utah State Senate
as a member of the Board of Water Resources,
as a member of the Board of Water Resources,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge
and I will discharge
the office or the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
right.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Director. We appreciate that, and we're so glad that you're officially official, Mike.
Yes. And let me just say, Mike, welcome to the board. Of all the boards in the state of Utah, there's quite a few, but of all the boards, I think this is far and away the work you do is the most important, has the biggest impact, the largest impact across the state for the people of Utah, and the decisions you make have broad, sweeping impacts. And the policy, the direction that you give to the division and helping us and helping the department formulate and guide direction in our water policy throughout the state is so critical, especially in these times. We're facing unprecedented challenges. We've got a little reprieve right now. Let's not get too used to it. Let's continue to focus on conservation efforts, but also on wise use of water and recognizing the policies that we put in place will just dictate how we, as a state, live, grow, develop for the years to come. So thank you. And this isn't an easy task. Thank you for taking this on. It takes really, I mean, I look at this board and I look at the professionals that are here, the wealth of knowledge, the backgrounds, the diverse backgrounds, different areas of the state. What you bring to the table is so critical. And so thank you. Thank you, Mike, for serving, and to the rest of the board. Thank you for the work you do. So, okay.
Great. Thank you. I don't know. I think this one's pretty special. Yeah.
Just you guys. Just you guys.
When I first came on the board, I was told that Division of Natural Resources was the best division in the state of Utah, and the Department of Water Resources was the best department within that division.
This is the best of the best.
It is. That's how I was trained.
You got some good training then.
I feel like I can actually be like objective in this, and I would agree.
Doesn't make it easy because it's the best, doesn't it?
No.
You better turn your microphone on so we can get this compliment on the record.
Yeah, I heard a compliment. One of the county commissioners in Millard County, Trevor Johnson, was down in southern Utah, and he said, he came to me and asked me, he says, "Do you know a Joel Ferry?" And I says, "Oh, yes." and he says, "He is sharp." And I says, "Yes, he is." And he says, "And he is young." He says, I didn't think somebody in that position would be that young. So there's your compliment.
Well, I got the hairline of
It's very true.
That's very nice. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody. Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. All right. Well, excellent. I'm so glad that we were able to take care of that. I guess maybe, Candace, on the next on the agenda will be a director's report. Do you want to give us a little preview of that report?
Yeah,
Or not?
I mean, I could, but then I'll spoil
Yeah.
all the fun. I will just say, I have a number of items to cover. This week was interim week, and we had the opportunity to the Legislative Water Development Commission meeting on Monday to present on all of kind of the bills from 2023 and give a status update. So I'll cover a few of those, talk a little bit about ag optimization, what's going on in the Colorado River, watershed councils, a conservation update, and talk a little bit about Utah waterways and how that's proceeding. So that's kind of generally what I will cover.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. And then if I've got this right, it looks like we will, okay, so then the last thing on the agenda is we'll go into closed session, and I guess we'll just wait until closed session to have our conversations about what we need to discuss. Do we have, I know there's like a certain protocol to closing the meeting or closing the session down. Do we have directions, or maybe during the break, we can just make sure we have the right motions and all of that?
Yep, we will get those for you.
Okay.
And Marty had a conflict this morning for the briefing meeting, but he will be here to make sure we do everything right in the board meeting. And we will get a cheat sheet for those.
All right, okay. Does anyone, I know we have to have our discussion in the closed session, but does anyone have any questions generally about protocol on closed session? Okay, all right. So let's see, then we need to go on to information to the board. Shalane, are you doing that piece for us? Or
Yes, I can start
Okay,
us
excellent.
off.
Thank
Let me
you.
get there. So I guess actually first up on the list is Shalane with status of funds. So
right, very
I'll just turn
good.
it right over
Thank
to her.
you.
Okay, so status of funds is kind of fun. There's a little bit different piece than what we've been having, of course, with the start of a new fiscal year. So let's talk first about the revolving construction fund. I don't know how many of you recall, in June, we talked about, it actually looked like the revolving fund was going in the hole because we had got some new dam safety contracts finalized before the end of the fiscal year, even though we didn't have the money. But now, look at how great the revolving fund looks. And it's not all available for regular projects because the legislature provided the board with $25 million in one-time dam safety funding, which all goes into the revolving fund. So that's why the revolving fund looks so much bigger than it has lately. But 25 million of that is specifically for dam safety. So some of it has already been contracted, as I mentioned, so there isn't that full amount available. But we are working to get dam safety projects moving now that we have that extra funding. And we really appreciate that the legislature realized the need for dam safety funding. It's something we're pushing for again. For those of you who might not remember, because you do so much and there's so much going on, our typical appropriation is $3.8 million a year for dam safety, and that's just not enough to do much every year. So these 25 million in one-time funds was great. We're now hoping to ask for a regular increase so that we're able to do more every year, not just every once in a while. So that's why the revolving fund looks like that. Our city's water loan fund, nothing's changed, except that it's grown a little bit because we now have some interest, repayments coming back into the fund. So we have a little bit more available than we did last year. So I think we'll be looking for more projects that can be funded from that account rather than the C&D fund. Because of course, that's where so much of the action has been happening over the last year between that and ARPA. We do still look pretty good on our cash flow there, even funding the large Deer Creek project, because we do have funded larger projects lately. We do have some larger repayments coming in, so we're still growing that amount that's available every year. But our C&D fund is still looking pretty good, so we can still do more. So if you guys hear of projects that need funding, ask them to submit an application. We're happy to hear that. Our small system secondary grant funds, we got another $2 million at the beginning of the fiscal year, so we have some funds there to spend. These are the ones, though, that because they're an annual appropriation, if we don't use them, we risk losing them unless we get non-lapsing authority from the legislature. So it's weird to juggle this along with all the ARPA funds, but we're going to keep trying to figure out how we can do that. And then, of course, there's our ARPA funds, which you'll see has been adjusted because there aren't $250 million available this year. In fact, as we've discussed in prior board meetings, we are now down to just over 41 million available. I will say between this and the ARPA water conservation projects, there's been a slight adjustment, and I'll explain. You'll see I changed that water conservation project grant funds. We were appropriated $18 million, and when the applications all came in, and you actually all committed those funds at the last meeting, they're $9,000 short of 18 million. So it's ARPA funds. We have 9,000 more now for secondary meters. 3 more meters, yay. We'll take them. So that's why the numbers on the ARPA secondary meter and the ARPA water conservation might look a little different from the last meeting, is that $9,000 adjustment, just so you're aware. But those $41,101,000 that it shows remaining beyond what's currently authorized and committed are what we've got to split amongst those who have requested 67 million. We expect that some of them, if not all, will be here at the October meeting, not here, Garden City, where we'll all be, and in October, to request the committal of those additional grant funds. Since none of them are, well, one of them's getting what they asked for. Most of the rest are getting just a proportionate amount, not the full amount they requested. There probably won't be loan authorizations at that time as they all figure out just how much they actually need to finish their projects, since they aren't going to get the full grant amount. So that's our current status of funds in the new fiscal year 24. Any questions?
Yeah, back to the small system fund that you talked about. Does that 2.9 million include the fiscal year addition of the 2 million?
Yes.
So before that, it would have been just 966.
Yep.
So that's the, okay.
Yep. There's actually some concern that we did lapse some money last year. Going to see if there's a way we can fix that. But yeah, we don't want that to happen again for sure. So if we aren't completely bombarded with 100 applications, maybe we can figure out some of these small systems, how to fund them at least 50% with the small system grants to use up those funds, and then provide maybe just 20% of ARPA funding or so.
And then a question back on the revolving construction fund account, where there's been an additional $25 million one-time added to that for the purpose of dam safety grants.
Yes.
How is that information being made available to recipient or interested parties?
So dam safety is a special program, of course. It doesn't happen like all the others. And in those instances, and I don't know, Tom could probably answer more directly, but we invite them to apply. We invite the next ones on the list.
You've gone down through and have the
Yep.
list.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
You're just working down the list.
yep, we send them an application and say, fill this out and send it in. But go ahead, Tom.
So that's the easy, simple answer. So right now, Dam Safety and Water Rights is sending out letters to 3 different dam owners that are on the top of their priority list, telling them to hire an engineer and get things going, so for construction in the next year or 2. We also have 12 NRCS dams that are in the process of design that they will be getting some of these funds too, and those we kind of have to follow along the NRCS guide or timelines for those. But yes, for the simple question is, Dam Safety and I get together, we talk about the funding, we look at the priority list, and then they send out a letter instructing the dam owners to hire an engineer and proceed with the project, just depending on how much money we have available.
Okay.
And Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but of that 25 million, about 9 has already been contracted for those ones that needed additional funds last year and didn't have it. So remaining in this $29 million at the bottom of the page, there's only about 16 that are available for dam safety.
Right, that's finishing up the cost of Sevier Bridge, and DMA needs a little bit more work, and so those amounts have been contracted, and they will eventually come out of that 25 million.
Okay.
Is there some way to show that? I don't know if you should show it. I'll tell you why. I just want to make sure that, analysts on Capitol Hill aren't looking at this and seeing big pots of money. So
Right.
is there some, I don't know if there's some
We
way to show it
can,
here.
in
Okay.
fact, we haven't done this until we had these ARPA, all these secondary meter projects, but we could treat it similarly to how we've done the secondary meter projects in the C&D fund, kind of separating them out. It's weird because the accounting, it's technically all coming from the revolving fund, but we can, maybe separate it into 2 sections saying regular revolving projects and dam safety projects. And the key there too is those projects or those funds then aren't really revolving because they're grants.
Yeah,
So they aren't coming back in repayments.
Exactly.
So yeah,
okay.
we can do that for next time. I'll make a note and
great.
we can separate
Yeah.
those projects.
And I want to be clear, like, I think the way that you've explained it to us is totally sufficient, and I think that I have a good understanding, but just if someone's looking at the page, without the context, I think doing that would be helpful. So
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not aware of any analysts up there that do that.
Oh, never. Never.
No, and I had the same question because I went through, after you sent this out separately, I went through and added up the fund balances, and it's over $150 million. And I thought, that's, that's a lot of money. And someone who's looking for money without additional explanation as to how it's being used and why it's needed and such, might be beneficial.
Well, Candace, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to make one additional comment that it probably not shown in this status of funds, but we are expecting some additional money to be transferred from the WIRA, the Water Infrastructure Restricted Account, into the C&D account in the amount of about $50 million for each year for the next 4 years. And that's really aimed at water reuse, storage reservoirs, piping and systems, particularly for Washington County area. The language is broad enough in statute that it covers the entire Colorado River Basin. There are restrictions that have to be, conservation restrictions that have to be put into place to be eligible for those funds. But that's something else that you guys can anticipate seeing here in the next little bit.
Well, and I will add to that, Kyle, your comment about adding up all the funds, and that's a lot of money. And I will say we did meet with some legislative fiscal analysts earlier this year who were doing an accountable budget review of the C&D fund and the revolving construction fund, and had to make sure they understand this process, that even though there's that number at the top, that maybe the existing balance in the account, that doesn't mean that's all available. You have projects committed, you have projects authorized, so we had to show them these status of funds and saying, the board has already essentially promised to provide a bunch of that money for projects already. So the numbers at the bottom are a lot more important than the numbers across the top. So we are definitely trying to convey that message that, and we were very happy to see that when the analyst who met with us about this made her presentation to the committee earlier this week, her primary concern was that the code is kind of a mishmash of things put together in the last 75 years, and some of it doesn't make sense, and some of it lists appropriations that were one time in 1963. They're still in code. So the bulk of her recommendation was not to do anything with the funding, but let's clean up the code. So that was a good thing to see.
And I'd also add to that, they also want to see us add some performance measures to this, the C&D fund specifically. We already have them for the revolving and construction fund.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Shalane.
Thanks, Shalane. Okay, so next up, just wanted to give you a quick update on Lake Powell Pipeline. As I just mentioned, they're obviously focused on conservation and reuse while they're waiting for the 7 basin states to resolve all the Colorado River challenges. One of the things that they have done in the last year is they have published a new 20-year plan that outlines the conservation and reuse efforts that will help them meet the demands in their area for the next 20 years. They still have Lake Powell Pipeline as a long-term need, but they're really looking to all of their ways that they can do it through conservation and reuse right now. The proposed projects in this plan essentially optimize the use of all the Virgin River water by the end of the 20 years, and at that point they'll look to needing LPP. The other thing that we wanted to note, that because it does impact or could impact the Lake Powell Pipeline, is the new national monument. So this is the ancestral footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument. And it's designed it kind of encompasses both north and south of the Grand Canyon, and part of the options for Lake Powell Pipeline, that alignment, are impacted by the new monument boundaries. So we are continuing, so this is all in Arizona, right? It's not in Utah, but it does impact this part of the Lake Powell Pipeline as it goes through there. But we'll be looking at how it could impact the project and how do we best address that. So there's just a little bit of information on the Lake Powell Pipeline. The next thing we wanted to chat about was the October board meeting and the tour, and maybe get an update from that. Marisa?
Sorry, I've got an extra 10 pounds on my foot. Yeah, so we will be staying in Garden City, Sunrise Resort and Event Center. So we'll have everything there. I was gonna catch up with Charlie here later. We'll kind of figure out some stuff for the tour, like a possible board lunch on the tour itself. So the tour is on Wednesday, starting about 8:30 in the morning. So we're planning on having you all stay the night before. And then we'll have the tour that day, and then the next morning is going to be early. Are we looking at 8 and 10? We're looking at 8 a.m. briefing meeting, 10 a.m. for the board meeting, and so that will be held there at the resort and event center where we will be staying. There's about 20 rooms that are there that are available, so we'll be able to accommodate executive leadership and the board members. And then we're going to have to figure out some other things for others that come, potentially having to stay in Logan. So that is the plan, and we are going to be touring. Well, Charlie, do you want to tell about the tour?
Well, Marisa and I visited with Con Baldwin from Pacific Corp and discussed looking at the north end of the lake and where Pacific Corp's diversion structures are and their pump facilities, where they divert water from the Bear River into Bear Lake. What else, Marisa?
I think that was about it. We're gonna have to kind of go the long way because we're gonna stay off dirt roads, so we'll be going through Montpelier. So I don't know if there's any other things Candace may know about through parks.
Yeah, so I did reach out to the Division of Recreation about getting you guys on a boat out at Bear Lake. And Jason Curry said he would get back to me, but I am still hopeful that we'll be able to get you out on a boat on Bear Lake. Get you on the water.
And that would be following the tour that day.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll be cool first week of October, but yesterday morning it was 51 degrees at my place. It was pretty cool yesterday morning. So if we'd been touring up there yesterday, like we might have been, it would have been pretty cool then, too.
And we should get that in the record so we can check back to see what the temperature ends up being.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of glad we're not up there right now because I did find Instagram posts and my niece and her family are up there and her kids. So, yeah, it's probably good we didn't go.
Well, a couple weekends ago, I was by, I guess it's First Dam in Logan, and I was trying to get on Highway 89, and I had to wait 10 minutes for the cars coming down Logan Canyon before I could get on the highway there. And just a comment, I'm still, I think I've got a commitment from Bear River Water Conservancy and Bear River Canal Company to sponsor the meals, but I don't know that they have any idea where to get meals. They would like to sponsor it, but I don't think they know where to go.
And I can reach out to Claudia Conder, Hodges Irrigation Company. She's up there, and I can ask her what her thoughts would be on that. They do know it's in Garden City, though, right? It's not on their side of the mountain.
I'm pretty sure of that. And I'm still working on Cache Water District, too, but they plead poverty quite a bit with me, so. anyway, that's what I'm working on, or what I've worked on.
And just especially we have new board members, we do let you know that, if you want to bring a +1, you can, and let Shannon know. It would just be, the one room for you. And, but yeah, we know Blaine won't be able to make it up, even to the board meeting. It sounds like he and I talked because it's an early board meeting. And even Blaine with his early morning, he has a late night the night before, so he will not. So he'll be online. He's planning to be online that day. But yeah, and we're glad we switched it. It was very difficult to figure out accommodations at all up there, much less in August. We would have had to have stayed in Logan and gotten that bus, and they would have had to. Bus may have had to wait 20 minutes to get onto Highway 89. So this makes it a little bit easier, where you're not having to drive up the canyon on the bus. So.
Great. Thank you, Marisa. So once again, I know we've highlighted it several times, but we're super excited to have Mike here and for our Provo River District. We do still have one more board member, and this is our new board member. This last legislative session, we had a board member added to include Great Salt Lake interests into the board. So we have had some applications and submitted a recommendation to the governor's office. So we are hopeful that we will have this new board member by October, depending all the things that Mike just went through, right? The governor's approval, Senate confirmation, all of those things. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm just super grateful for my team here at Water Resources and all the work that they do and all the ideas that they share. And we were discussing at our Monday staff meeting on the new board member and all the excitement that we're having. And one of our great staff engineers is like, well, he's on the planning side. He's like, well, I know that when we have new staff, and this is probably news to some of you guys because this is an idea I just came up with this morning and ran by a couple of people. But when we have new board members, so when we have new staff, Mike, when we have new staff, we bring them into the board and introduce them and say, here's our new staff person. But when new board members come on, there's not a good way to have you guys meet kind of the whole division. And this includes Dana and Spencer and Mike and our new Great Salt Lake board member. So one of the ideas I wanted to run by the board and see if you guys were amenable to this is to have, at our Salt Lake meetings, have a small presentation on the different sections within our division. So each board meeting would cover like one section. So like we have design and construction in our geology sections, that they could come, all be here, present a little bit about the work that they do. And then we'd also invite them to join us for lunch. And so you guys can get to know more of our staff. Just wanted to kind of run that by you, get your thoughts on that, and make it happen.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Second that.
Okay.
Agreed.
Awesome. Okay, well then we will start that. I know we try to keep our December meeting pretty short, so it may really be January. We'll really start that because you'll all be having at our December meeting. We do have our board luncheon, and we invite all of our staff to that, so you'll have an opportunity to start interacting with them, but it'll probably be January when we start seeing these kind of individual sections and invite them to each of the Salt Lake board meetings and to lunch. So, okay, well, great. And I think the last thing that we had was to chat about the proposed board meeting dates, and I think, is that Shalane, you or Marisa?
Yeah, so of course we didn't publish this, post it, anything, so we aren't going to ask you to take action, but our wonderful AV team here is responsible for kind of scheduling this room, making sure they're available when we need them. So they're looking for dates. And so we came up with some proposed dates for next year, and I just wanted to get your input. I mean, I know you probably don't all have your calendars on you right at this moment, but if in the next week you could look over see if you have a big conflict. I believe we do know, Joel, I didn't check with you, but it was on your calendar that water users is definitely that week of the 18th through the 20th of March in St. George, as far as you know. So that date is always, we do our board meeting in conjunction with the water users workshop in St. George, which is why the March meeting is always kind of determined for us. It's a Wednesday afternoon after the workshop ends. The rest of them, we typically hold our meetings on Thursday. Thursdays aren't available next December of 2024 already. So at least the early ones, we never want to have you come to a meeting right before the holidays. So we've proposed either the 10th or the 11th, which is a Tuesday or a Wednesday, just to get your opinion on which works better for you. So even though I'm showing these to you now, we'll send them out in an email and ask you to respond within a week. Does anyone know, just looking at these, does anyone know right now something's not going to work for you? Blaine?
On the 27th, I'm having my family reunion with all the grandkids,
Nice.
people, and we just reserved a great
Nice.
cabin thing.
Cool.
Wow, okay.
That will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so the 26th, 27th.
So that whole week, pretty much, okay. Okay. Okay.
Party time.
See?
Great idea.
See, Tom just asked, you got room for the board meeting down there? We'll come to you.
That sounds wonderful.
And also I also put down a note there at the bottom. According to the rotation, next year's tour is scheduled for the Salt Lake Tooele area. So, knowing that, having no idea what we'll do, Juliette, I would assume you're open to hosting that.
Absolutely.
So keep in mind then, as we look at these dates, we also need to figure out which one works the best for a tour. I know the idea is generally to get out of this building for our board tours, just to be a little more inclusive to the rest of the state. So I don't know, Shannon, maybe you won't have to drive that day so far. Maybe we can find somewhere. Yeah, your house. Yeah.
That's the one we went out to the pump.
That's what, yeah, was that the tour?
I don't think that was a board tour. I think that was just a special tour. There were some legislators included, I think.
That was interesting.
Yeah, we do
Let's
like,
that, yeah.
and that is an option if someone's going to be in the area. We do have staff that goes out to regularly maintain the pumps,
Yeah,
not
I'd
turn
like
them
to.
on, as one news story reported one time. We don't turn them on. We simply maintain them. But that is one of the jobs of our design and construction section, is to keep those pumps so that they aren't completely falling apart. So no, if someone is interested in seeing that sometime, that is an option we could probably arrange.
It's always, or not always, but occasionally a question that I get asked. Or people are sure the pumps don't exist anymore out there. And
Oh, they do exist.
I have to inform people, yes, they do, and they will work.
Yeah, it would take a lot of work to actually get them running again, but they are still there, and they are maintained on pretty much a monthly basis.
Cool.
So,
I think potentially we should include that in our tour, and we should think about how hot it is out there
right?
on certain days. But
Yeah. Okay, well, and that's why I'm open if we want one in May or we want to wait till October next year again. I'm okay with whatever you all prefer. So
Great.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Anything else?
That's all we had for you.
All right. Any other items that we need to check in on?
I have an item.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was contacted through Tom, thanks for all your help, by the way. He's awesome, and I'm new. From Muddy Creek Irrigation Company, who has previously been funded. They ended up, help me out, Tom, changing some of their plans. Some things didn't happen. They have about $73,000 left. I think recently they came to get some money before that, and I was advised that since the threshold is about $100,000 to bring board action, that they sent over the plans, and Tom looked at them, I looked at them for what that's worth, and I was able to write an email to them authorizing them to use the funds without, and they're essentially connecting 4 or 5 more farms just to use up the rest of the loan money and get a couple new connections. And they had redlined and taken out some of the other parts of the plan that weren't working because of property issues, right, Tom? They couldn't get an easement or something.
Right, the board's been working with Mindy Creek for years now on piping their system, and recently they had a federal grant to finish the transmission lines and start doing the on-farm things. And these, I believe it was just last year, they came back before the board for an expansion of scope to pipe some of the on-farm things, because they had over 200,000 or so that was left over from the main project. So now they finished that. They still have 73,000, and so they want to use that. So it doesn't take a board action, and so we've worked with the company of giving the approval. This is just for your information. So it's for on-farm things. There are some farmers that have withdrawn, so those are the pipelines won't go on their farms. Others are still in it, so that's where the money will go towards those pipelines.
That's good. I realize that we don't need board action, but I really appreciate you sharing it with the board and just knowing the information. And I assume this happens from time to time, so it's just interesting for us to kind of understand what these projects look like. And so thank you. Thank you to Dana and Tom. Any questions on that? All right, thank you. Any other items we need to check in on? Well, I guess so. Does someone want to tell us about what the plan for lunch is?
Yes, so I think it's gonna be here at 12 or just before 12, probably just before 12, up in our conference room, Water Resources, 314. And I had heard at one point it was sandwiches because we might had an issue with our conference room, but it ended up getting resolved. Are we still? Okay, so we're doing
Great,
sandwiches,
great.
and will it be set up in my kind of small? Okay, so
just
it'll
meet
all
up
be in
there?
the conference room. So
right.
we'll have drinks and things up there. So you get a few minutes to stretch your legs
Yeah.
and before we have lunch.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll be looking for a motion to adjourn this briefing meeting. All right,
I'll second it.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Thank you.